Hi, I'm Brandy, and in this video we're going to be doing a lingerie chest makeover. So I got this lingerie chest. It's got 7 drawers in it, a lot of detail, very cute little piece. I picked it up at a thrift store for $30 and I thought it was worth every penny, even though it was in kind of a little bit of rough shape and it was, kind of cheaply made, but it was very beautiful. The design or the detail on the front drawers, I just fell in love with immediately, and I knew right away that this can be beautified, so that was my plan. As you can see, there are some wiggly pieces in here. The drawers are all in pretty good shape. That I didn't need to do any repair to the drawers, but definitely here on the structure part of the actual frame, there needed to be some repairs done. So the first thing I did was started to just clean this thing. I used some Dawn dish soap and water with a dish sponge and just scrubbed it all down. I also scrubbed down the insides and outsides of each drawer. After everything was scrubbed down with the Dawn dish soap and water, I went back through with a wet cloth and just kind of wiped everything clean. I always make sure to clean everything, every piece of furniture that I do before getting started, because you want to make sure that your paint or product is going to adhere to the furniture without going over any old dirt or grime or anything like that. Dawn dish soap works perfectly for this because A, it's readily available in my kitchen, and B, it is a degreaser, so it really does a trick on getting the cleaning done. So once everything was scrubbed down and then wiped clean, I came in to address the situation with the wiggly and broken pieces that were the drawer dividers. So there were some pieces that just weren't fitting in flush with the sides, and then there was one here that was completely detached. So I evaluated a couple things. One, I wanted to see how much wiggle room the drawers had when I put them in on each slot, to see if there was any difference from like the top to the bottom, and there wasn't. It was just kind of each drawer just sat in there a little bit wiggly regardless of which slot that they went into. So I knew that my first course of action was going to be to have to get these dividers attached really good. So this piece right here had some finishing nails that were sticking out that had previously been holding the divider into place. So I went ahead and started yanking those out to get them out of the way, basically. After I got those out, I just flipped it over on its side and decided that I needed to secure that one by putting finishing nails back in. So I figured with 1 or 2 nails back in there, it would hold it into place, and then I could move on to the next step. So I just pulled out some small finishing nails from a picture hanging kit that I had nearby, and that seemed to get the ball rolling. I came in with some wood glue just to apply in some of the areas that I wanted to make triple sure that they would stay sturdy. There was a track in here that, even though I put the finishing nail in, I just wanted to make sure that it would stay sturdy. So I threw some wood glue on there and then clamped it down so that it would dry in place. And then I touched up some other little sections where there were some gaps between the divider and the frame, because I planned on clamping the sides closely or more secure, and I felt like if it was bowing a little bit, which I didn't notice clearly that there was a bow, but I figured because there was this gap that was taking place on the right hand side here between the divider and the frame, it had to have some sort of bowing. So I just applied some wood glue, and then I brought out my big clamps and I clamped the sides together pretty tightly, and then I left it overnight to dry. Meanwhile, that was chilling overnight. I went ahead and got to work on the drawers. So I took some 150 grit sandpaper, and I just started scuff sanding the drawers as much as possible around and over the detail, along with the sides as well. This just gives some texture to the drawers, so it gives something for the paint to adhere to. I wasn't actually trying to sand off any of the existing paint or anything like that. I just wanted to give it some texture for the paint to adhere to. So sometimes I used the sandpaper around the sponge, and then sometimes I just used the sandpaper with my finger to kind of get in those little nooks and crannies. And after I had done this process on all 7 drawers, I went back in and wiped everything clean again just to get rid of all that dust. So this chest I was making for my best friend. When I picked it up, I sent her a picture of it because I was super excited. She loved it. So I decided that I was going to paint it and gift it to her for her birthday. So I let her choose the color, and she wanted something with pink and gold. So I was able to kind of use my creative side on how I wanted to incorporate those 2 colors, but the pink was an amazing choice for such a elegant, feminine looking piece like this, and I thought it would go perfectly with the other dresser that she had purchased from me, which was green with gold accent. So after everything was wiped off, I went in here with some bin primer with shellac, and I just started applying the primer to all of the drawers. Now, I planned on painting with chalk paint, and with chalk paint, technically you do not need to use a primer. However, I have found during my journey that adding primer before painting is just key to anything. So now I prime everything. It's just a step that I don't skip anymore, because you'll find that you'll get a color that's not consistent. You'll get bleed through from time to time, and even though this was a white piece, it did have some coloring involved on the detailed pieces, so adding the primer was going to help give me that clean slate to begin with. And I just used a small whatever brush that I pulled out, and just started applying this primer all over the place, and then set that aside to dry. Now, if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe below. I come out with new content weekly. I like to pick up pieces that are free or relatively cheap and give them a makeover and then sell them for a profit. And I've been really enjoying the journey. I've been doing it for a few months now, and new content is coming out every week. And if you have any tips or tricks for me or any questions, go ahead and use the comment box below. I'd love to hear from you, answer any questions, or hear any of the advice or comments that you would like me to hear. So I left the drawers to dry overnight, and the next day I came in and started unclamping the frame of this chest. And I was very happy to find out that everything was nice and secured as expected, and it was all sturdy. So that was what I was going for. I wanted to make sure that the frame was nice and sturdy, so adding those finishing nails, adding the wood glue, clamping it overnight, that's what did the trick. So now I wanted to fill in any of those little gaps, and I used all-purpose Bondo putty. And so I just slopped a little bit of this on, I usually use cardboard. In this case, I just had some kind of newspaper hanging around. So I just put it onto the newspaper, added the hardening cream, started mixing it together really quickly. I love Bondo. It works amazing. It works wonders. I use it on almost every project now. And so that's what I went for here. And I just started adding it on all these little areas that you can see where like that drawer divider meets frame. There was a gap there on not all of the drawer slots, but on the majority of them. So I just added the Bondo on those and then set it aside to dry. Bondo is wonderful because it dries so quickly. You only have to wait like 15 minutes for it to dry. So depending on how much you put and how thick and all that. For the thin layers that I was doing here, it was about a 15-minute wait time for that to dry. For this project, I used the Behr chalk paint in a color match powder pink, almost like. I don't have the exact color on hand because they didn't put it on the can, unfortunately. I picked a color off the wall, handed it over to the paint counter. They did a color match and gave it back to me, and I didn't log the color, so I apologize. But it's a very soft pink, yet still a vibrant color, and I thought it was going to look so cute on this lingerie chest. So I was excited to get to my favorite part of the project, which is painting. It's always the best part. So I got started on the drawers. I just used a small chalk brush. I actually think this is a wax brush. It came in a kit that I had got off of Amazon that had like a variety of brushes, wax and chalk paint. But I liked that it had the pointy tip that was going to help me get into all of those little, nooks and crannies. So I went ahead and just started painting the drawers. Now at this point, I was kind of unsure exactly what I was going to do. I knew that I wanted to add some flowers in here. I just had to add some floral accent to this piece. And I at first thought I was going to add floral inside of the drawers as like a liner, but then I later on changed my mind, and you'll have to stay tuned to find out what I did. But with keeping in mind that I thought I was going to put the liner on the insides of the drawers, I went ahead and painted the fronts of the drawers as well as the sides. So after repeating this process on all 7 drawers, this is what we were looking at. Color was beautiful, but I had to put those aside, let them dry, and start working on the frame over here. So I came in with some 150 grit sandpaper again and just started sanding down all of the Bondo to make it smooth and flush with the surface. And this took a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of time and patience, but it's all part of the process, so it was no problem, and got it all worked out. So once it was all sanded smooth, I went back in, wiped all the dust off, and then I was ready to apply the primer to the stand. Same process I did on the drawers, just adding that single coat of the bin primer with shellac to get that consistent and clean slate to get started on. After the primer had dried for some time, I was ready to start painting. I always keep my paint and my brushes in a Ziploc bag. For the brushes, I just throw them in a Ziploc bag, and then for my paint container, I just make sure to either put a lid on it if I have one. In this case, I didn't have a lid, so I just threw some saran wrap on there to make sure that no air was going to get out, and then I put those in the fridge for a bit. And this just saves time in between coats so that I do not have to clean the brushes in between coats. So I always do this with my projects, and it seems to work out so far. So I just applied that light coat of paint on the actual chest. Now the way that these legs were, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get all the way to the bottom of them while it was standing. So I just got as low as I could here, and then in a minute you'll see that I actually flipped it over and put it on the lower level of my horses so that I was able to then better get to the bottom of those legs. And I'm just loving the pink color at this point. It's just so pretty. For the sides, because it was more volume of area, I went ahead and grabbed a larger chalk brush to make this process go a little quicker than by using that little smaller brush. While I had it hoisted up, I went ahead and just proceeded to apply all 3 coats to the bottom. And in these little holes that you can see here, I guess that would be the best way to describe them, my brush was not going to fit in there. So I went ahead and grabbed an even smaller brush from the craft stash so that I can get the paint into those little holes. And that seemed to work out pretty good. Then while that was drying, I came back over to apply the second coat of paint to all of the drawers. So I did the same exact process as I did with the first coat, just going over the entire front and both sides with the paint. So I did a total of 3 coats of paint on the drawers as well as the frame, and that gave, you know, the 3 coats gave it that perfect consistent color, and it was just flawless. I was very pleased with how it came out, the actual paint part of it. So once the drawers were dry, I was super excited to try a brand new technique of decoupage. So I had gone to, I think it was like Joann Fabrics or something, and I was poking around trying to find something floral, and I couldn't put these pieces of floral paper in the bottoms of the drawers where they weren't going to be admired because they would be piled with stuff on top of them. So I decided that I was going to decoupage them onto the sides of the drawers so that when the drawers get opened, you can see the beautifulness of the floral. I am so in love with flowers. I just think that they're gorgeous. And these pages that I picked up for like 50 cents each page were perfect. They had that perfect tone of pink underneath, and then the yellow was going to complement the gold. So I was super excited. So I have this mat that is actually from my sewing supplies, and I was able to just start measuring the sides of the drawers and then slicing the page with this X-Acto knife to get just the right size. And I repeated this process for all 7 drawers, which meant I needed 14 of these little cutouts. Although the first time around I only did 7 because I don't know why I didn't realize that I would need them for each side of the drawer. So I needed to double up. But after all was said and done, I had 14 of these small little cutouts that were going to fit almost perfectly on the sides of the drawers. I was a little bit intimidated to get started with the decoupage. This was my very, very first time doing decoupage. I watched several videos on YouTube from other people who have done them. Always so helpful. So I decided to go with the Modge Podge and a small little brush. I did want a shinier finish, so I did go with the satin Modge Podge as opposed to the matte. And I had to actually pour it into a cup because my little teeny tiny brush here was too wide to fit inside the Modge Podge container. So I did a very thin layer of Modge Podge on here first, and then I pressed the paper onto the side of the drawer and just kind of went over it with my fingers to make sure that there were no wrinkles. Now, this is a thicker type of paper. It's not like a cardstock, but it's definitely not a tissue paper. And I am looking forward to working with tissue paper in the future, but I'm also kind of scared because I've heard horror stories about how it can wrinkle really easily. But luckily with this paper, because it was just a straight side, I didn't have any issues with wrinkling or lifting up on the edges or anything. So I simply put that thin layer of Modge Podge, I pressed the paper onto it. It did have some overlap, so here you can see that I'm pushing down the side to kind of crease the edge, because later on, after I put the top layers of the Modge Podge, I would come in and sand those off. So I repeated this process of just applying the page to each side on all of the drawers. Once that was done on all the drawers and on both sides and had dried, I came back in with the Modge Podge and did a layer on top to seal it in. And in between coats, so for the top coat, I used 3 layers of Modge Podge, and I allowed for about a half an hour dry time in between each coat. Luckily, there were so many drawers, and each drawer having 2 sides. You know, by the time I worked through all 7 drawers, almost a half hour had already passed, so I didn't have to do any twiddling of my thumbs for very long. There was always something else to do in the meantime. And I could tell you that I was so happy with the way that this turned out. Even though I was a little bit intimidated going into it for my first time, I was ecstatic about the way that it turned out and how difficult it wasn't to do. It wasn't difficult at all. So while those were drying, I came back over to the tower with my Behr Decorative Wax Clear, and I just used a wax brush, and then I had a lint-free cloth, and I just applied the wax. Working in sections, I would just apply the wax. Like here, I applied it to the entire top, and then I went ahead and buffed it out with that lint-free cloth. So on this tower, I also did 3 coats of the wax, just for that extra protection. Like I said, this is going to my friend. She's got a young child who's only about 4 years old, sorry. And you know, she likes to touch stuff, so I wanted to make sure to protect the piece as much as possible while she had it around her daughter. So 3 layers of that wax on the frame. Once the sides of the drawers were dry, I did the same wax process on the fronts of the drawers. So just brushing the wax on and then using the lint-free cloth to buff it away. So now it was time to add the gold. I used this Gilding wax by Jolie that I had ordered on Amazon, and I just used a small little detail paintbrush and decided that what I was going to do is just brush in gold into all of the details of the fronts of the drawers. So I just started going over every little spot on here that had a crease and adding the gold, and I think it was coming out beautifully. After I added the gold to all of the little creases, I then went around the entire edge of that detail design as well to give it more depth and character. And this, I feel, was the final touches for these drawers after adding the paint, after adding the floral paper, and then finally giving it the character and depth with the gold. Because remember, my friend had wanted this piece to be in pink and gold, but she did not specify anything further than that. So it was kind of up to me. Adding that floral part of it was just a special little touch that I put in there that was going to be a surprise for her when she opened the drawers. And you know, adding this gold did take some time. So I was watching a movie or a documentary or something was going on the TV, and I just got comfortable on the couch and just sat here and spent probably, I would say, a couple hours going through each one of these drawers, applying this gilding wax to all of these little spots. And I didn't mind, because I felt like I was putting love into a piece that I was going to give to my dear friend. And you know, painting like this is very soothing to me and relaxing, so I enjoyed every minute of adding the gold to this detail. So again, you know, if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to my channel. I do not always post videos of such detailed work such as this. I normally am focusing on more trash to treasure type style, where I find a dresser or a piece of furniture on the side of the road, or for relatively, either free or relatively cheap, 10, 20 bucks. And then I fix it up and sell it for profit. And every once in a while, I like to get my creative side out and spend some significant time doing something so beautiful like this. I just enjoyed, like I said, every minute that I put into this project, and I knew that it was going to my friend, that I was going to be able to see it again. I wanted to take pride in this piece, and I just wanted it to be gorgeous, and I felt like that was being achieved with all these different techniques that were being put into it. So like I said, if you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe. Comment below. Let me know what you think of the gold. Let me know what you think of the floral. Have you worked with Modge Podge? Has it been difficult for you? I have another project coming up that I will be releasing in a couple weeks. I'm going to be doing a black dresser and adding a decoupage to the front of it. So this chest was kind of my trial run with the decoupage, so I'll be doing it on that dresser, and now I have a little teeny tiny bit of experience with it, so I'm not as intimidated going into such a big project doing that technique. So anyways, thanks for stopping by my channel if I haven't already said that now, but we do have a few more minutes to go here so that you can see the final touches and then the final result. Here's what all the drawers look like when they were done. Absolutely stunning. They were gorgeous. I just loved the way that they came out. I love seeing a vision come to reality. Now remember, when we put the decoupage on the sides of the drawers, there was that overlap on some of the edges. So after everything was fully dry, I came in with just a sanding block with a piece of sandpaper around it. I think this was 150 grit, and I just started sanding on the sides, going in a downward motion, which then left it with that smooth edge and got all the excess paper out of the way. And that did the trick. Came out good. Nice and smooth. So once the drawers were done, I needed to add gold to the frame, and this bottom part of the frame had all of this detail. So I wanted to do the same technique that I did on the drawer fronts, with coming in with the gilding wax and just going through all of those little creases with the gold to give the bottom of this some of that depth and character that came out in the drawer so beautifully. And then, as you'll see in a second, there were some sections like along the edges where I really piled on the gold in more thicker areas to just kind of give it some style. And I was very, very happy with the way that this thing came out, guys. I don't know if you could tell, but I spent a lot of time and patience, and it's love it. Love, 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 love it. It's definitely my favorite project so far. I feel bad about even handing it over to her. I still have it right now. It's been sitting in my living room for about a week because she is out of town and hasn't come by to pick it up yet. And I want to hide it from her and keep it, not even give it to her. But then I'd be a terrible friend. So